Hello everyone, this is John Hashmet and welcome to Physics Simply. In this video I will be solving the paper 2 exam for May-June 2023 variant 3. So let's get started. Question 1 says the speed time graph shows the motion of an object. How far does the object travel at constant speed? So this is the constant speed section, and the distance we can calculate using the area under the graph, which is a rectangle here. So we multiply the base, which is 10 from 5 to 15. So 10 multiplied by the height 5. That gives an answer of 50 meters. So the answer is B. Question 2 says which statement about a falling object accelerating close to the surface of the Earth is correct? So choice A says the weight of the object is increasing and the force of air resistance on the object is decreasing. So air resistance should be increasing if the speed is increasing. B says the weight of the object and the force of air resistance on the object are of equal magnitude. No, they shouldn't be equal. Since there is acceleration, there should be a resultant force. So the weight must be greater than the air resistance. C says the weight of the object is constant, but the force of air resistance on the object is increasing. Yes, this is a choice. Since moving close to the Earth's surface, the gravity field strength is almost constant. So the weight should be constant. And as speed increases, air resistance increases. Question 3 says an aircraft is moving at 60 meters per second in a northerly direction. When a crosswind from the east starts to blow, the speed of the wind is 13 meters per second. What is the magnitude of the aircraft's velocity when the wind is blowing? So we have 60 due north and 13 due west, from east to west. So we have these in the direction shown, and the resultant should be in this direction. We can use Pythagoras. We can calculate the resultant as the square root of 13 squared plus 60 squared. That gives an approximate value of 61 meters per second, so the answer is C. Question 4 says two rectangular blocks consist of different materials. 4 different methods are suggested to compare the two masses. Compare the accelerations with which they fall freely. They have the same acceleration. All objects have same gravity acceleration. Compare the values of their length, breadth, and heights. That does not give information about mass. Hang each in turn from the same spring. Compare the extensions. Yes, since the mass produces a weight, which is a force that will extend the spring. So the greater the weight and the mass, the greater will be the extension. So this method works. 4 says place one in the right hand pan of a beam balanced and the other in the left hand pan. Yes, this also shows that one object would be heavier than the other. So which methods give a comparison of the two masses? Only 3 and 4. So the answer is C. Question 5 says an object in a space probe above the Earth weighs 3.5 newtons. The gravitation field strength at the height of the space probe is 7.0 newtons per kilogram. The gravitational field strength on the Earth's surface is 9.8 newtons per kilogram. What are the mass and weight of the object on the Earth's surface? So first we calculate the mass. It's equal to the weight divided by the gravity field strength, which in this case it's 3.5 divided by 7.0. We get a mass of 0.50. So the answer is either A or B. And then we calculate the weight on Earth by multiplying the calculated mass, which is 0.50, by the 9.8 newtons per kilogram. And that gives an answer of 4.9. So the answer is B. Question 6 says a cyclist is traveling in a straight line along a horizontal road at constant speed. A constant driving force acts on the cyclist, called F, in the forward direction shown. Which statement about the magnitude of the frictional forces acting on the cyclist is correct? So if he is moving with constant speed, the backward force or the resistance force should be equal to the forward force. So the magnitude is equal to F. That is a correct choice. So it's A. Question 7 says a spring has an unstretched length of 3.0 centimeters. When a force of 60 Newton is applied to the spring, its length increases to 5 centimeters. The limit of proportionality is not exceeded. What is the spring constant of the spring? So the spring constant K is equal to the force divided by the extension. So we have 60 divided by 5 minus 3, that's 2. That gives an answer of 30 newtons per centimeter, so the answer is D. Question 8 says the diagram shows the minimum force F1 acting vertically on a lever required to lift a heavy log of weight W. The log needs to be lifted by a smaller force than F1. The diagrams show the changes tried. Each diagram has only one change from the original diagram. In each case, F2 is the minimum force required to lift the log. In which situation will F2 be smaller than F1? So we have the options here. Increasing the length of the lever to the right of the pivot. So if the distance increased, the required force would decrease. So P is okay. And here applying the force perpendicular to the lever, that actually increases the distance. Instead of pointing this way, we have a shorter distance than this distance. So this also increases the distance. So Q is okay. For R, we increase the distance from the log to the pivot. This actually increases the moment of the weight, making it more difficult for the F2 to rotate the lever. So R is not okay. So we have P and Q only, so the answer is B. Question 9 says a ball of mass 0.25 kilograms hits a wall at a speed of 16 meters per second. So we have an initial velocity. And rebounds back along the original path, so moving backwards with velocity 12 meters per second. So there was a change in direction. So if we take the final direction to be positive, the original direction would be negative. And you are free to choose which is positive and which is negative. What is the impulse experienced by the ball? So the impulse is equal to the change in momentum, which is m multiplied by v minus u. So we substitute with the mass 0.25 and substitute with velocities. The final was 12 and the initial was negative 16. So that gives an answer of 7 newtons second. So the answer is D. Question 10 says a bicycle braking system transfers energy from a kinetic energy store to an internal energy store. A motor converts energy from a chemical energy store to a kinetic energy store. What enables these energy transfers? So the braking system is a mechanical system, so it's mechanical work. For the motor, it is electrical work, converting from chemical to electric energy first before kinetic. So the answer is D. Question 11 says research is being carried out to produce electrical energy from the fusion of hydrogen nuclei. Which row shows two of the problems in designing a fusion reactor? So the temperature should be very high in order to make the positively charged nuclei actually go towards each other, since like charges repel. And why obtaining a high density of hydrogen nuclei is difficult? Because nuclei are negatively charged? No, they are positively charged and repel each other. This is the choice, so we choose D. Question 12 says the engine of a motor vehicle develops a large power. Which statement is correct? So the driving force acting on the vehicle must be large, not necessarily. The engine must have a very large volume, known unrelated. The engine must transfer large amounts of energy each second, so energy per time, that defines power, so the answer is C. Question 13 says the graph shows how the pressure due to a liquid varies with depth beneath the liquid surface. The gravitation field strength is 9.8 newtons per kilogram. What is the density of the liquid? So we can use a value from the graph, getting the pressure and the depth, and the equation pressure is equal to rho GH, and we need to calculate rho, so it is equal to the pressure divided by G and H. So if the pressure is 4000 Pascal and G is 9.8 and the depth is 0.50, we calculate this and get an answer of 820 kilograms per meter cubed, so we choose B. Question 14 says what is the lowest possible temperature? Absolute zero. And what happens to the energy of the particles at this temperature? So 0 Kelvin is negative 273 degrees Celsius. And the particle energy, the particles have least kinetic energy, or particles have zero gravitational potential energy. That is unrelated, so the answer is A. Question 15 says which statement about the particles of a substance after condensation is correct? They are close to each other and slide over each other. Yes. They are close to each other and vibrate about fixed position. No, that is in solid, and now we are a liquid. They are far apart from each other. No, that's in gases, so the answer is A. Question 16 says two otherwise identical cores, one black and one white, are at the same initial temperature. The cores are left in bright sunshine and their temperatures increase. During the night, their temperatures decrease. Which core shows the greater rate of temperature increase and temperature decrease? So this is basically absorption and emission of infrared. And the one that is the best absorber is also the best emitter. So the highest rise in temperature will be in the same object as the highest fall in temperature. And that happens with the black surfaces. So the answer is A. Question 17 says a drop of water from a tap falls onto the surface of some water of constant depth. Water waves spread out on the surface of the water. Which statement is correct? The waves are longitudinal. No. The waves are transverse and travel at the same speed in all directions. Yes, because the medium is the same and the wavelength did not change in the diagram. So the speed is constant. So we choose C. Question 18 says each point F is one focal length from the center of the lens. Each point 2F is two focal lengths from the center of the lens. Which diagram shows a converging lens being used as a magnifying glass? So a magnifying glass places the object between the focal point and the lens. So it's not A, it's not B, it's not C. So the answer is D, and the image is always virtual, made by the extensions of rays, and is always upright and magnified. So this is the answer. Question 19 says a monochromatic ray of green light in air enters a block of glass. Which property of the ray of light always remains the same as it moves from air to glass? Always remains the same is frequency. So we choose C. Question 20 says a narrow beam of white light passes through a prism and is dispersed into a spectrum. Which row is correct? So we have blue, yellow, and red. So the one with the least refraction or the least bending is the red one and going towards the violet. So the blue one would be at the end, nearer to the violet light, and the yellow would be in the middle. So one is red, and in the middle we have yellow, and at the end we have blue. So the answer is C. Question 21 says a student writes 4 statements matching a communication system to the region of the electromagnetic spectrum that it uses to transmit signals. Which statement is correct? So wireless internet uses visible wavelength. No, it uses either microwaves or radio waves. Mobile phones use X-rays. No, they use microwaves. Cable television uses infrared wavelength. Yes, if it's optic fibers. Bluetooth uses ultraviolet wavelength. No, it uses radio waves, so the answer is C. Question 22 says a ship sounds its horn when it is 790 meters from a cliff. A passenger on the ship hears the echo 4.8 seconds later. What is the speed of the sound? So we can calculate the speed is equal to twice the distance moving forward and back divided by the time. So we multiply 2 by 790 and then we divide by 4.8. That gives an answer of 329.16, which we can approximate to 330 meters per second. So the answer is B. Question 23 says which row gives the metal used to make the core of an electromagnet and one property of the electromagnet. So the metal is iron because it is a soft magnetic material, and the property that it is not a permanent magnet, it is a temporary magnet. So the answer is B. Question 24 says a plastic rod and a dry cloth are uncharged. The rod is now rubbed with the cloth and they both become charged. The rod becomes negatively charged. So the rod is negative. The cloth must be positively charged because some charged particles move from the cloth to the rod, and the particles that move are the electrons. So the answer is C. Question 25 says a student does an experiment to investigate the resistance of a metal wire. The graph shows the results of the experiment. What is plotted on the x-axis? So this is the graph of an inversely proportional relation. So the choices are the diameter of the wire. That could work, but the resistance is inversely proportional to the area, which depends on the diameter squared, not the diameter itself. B says the length of the wire. No, the length and resistance are directly proportional, so it should be a straight line through the origin. The temperature of the wire, actually the temperature increases the resistance of the wire as temperature increases, so this is also not the graph. The current in the wire, yes, because current is inversely proportional to resistance, so we choose D. Question 26 says the cost of electrical energy is $0.25 for each unit of 1 kilowatt hour. A 2200 watt heater is switched on for 48 minutes. What is the cost of this use? So we first calculate the amount of energy in kilowatt hour. So converting 2200 to kilowatt, that would be 2.2 kilowatts, dividing by 1000. And we need to convert the minutes into hours, so we divide them by 60. So we calculate the total energy as 2.2 times 48, and then we divide by 60. And then we multiply the amount of energy by the cost of 1 unit of energy, which is $0.25. That gives an answer of $0.44, so the answer is A. Question 27 says the table describes 4 different resistance wires. They are all made from the same metal. Which wire has the smallest resistance? So smallest resistance, we need the shortest length and the greatest diameter, so we choose 1.5. The common is B. Question 28 says the circuit shown contains 3 switches and 4 lamps P, Q, R, and S. Which switches must be closed to light only lamps P and R? So switch 1 must be closed for any lamp to work because this supplies the current from the battery, and lamp P has no switches, so it will work either way. And for R, there are also no switches, so switch 1 only, so we choose A. Since with switch 2 and 3 are open, the current goes through this point and splits to lamp P and then goes straight to lamp R and back to the battery, and the other current joins it without actually having to go through Q and S. Question 29 says the diagram shows the magnetic field around a solenoid carrying an electric current. What happens to the strength of the magnetic field and the distance between the field lines when the current is increased? So increasing the current increases the strength of the field. That means that the field lines get closer to each other, so the distance between the lines decreases. So the answer is C. Question 30 says the diagram shows a wire hanging freely between the poles of a magnet. There is a current in the wire in the direction shown. The magnet and current cause a force to act on the wire. In which direction does this force act? So we use Fleming's left-hand rule. So the index finger is pointing towards the S pole or from north to south, and the current is pointing downwards with the middle finger. The thumb will point into the page. So into the page away from you, that is the choice, we choose A. Question 31 says which component forms part of a DC motor but not a simple moving coil AC generator? So there are coils in both, brushes in both, magnets in both. The split ring commutator is not included in a generator, so we choose D. Question 32 says a transformer has 5,500 turns on the primary coil, so this is NP, and 500 turns on the secondary coil, so this is NS. The output of the secondary coil is 110 volts AC and is connected to a heater. The transformer is 100% efficient, so we have VS, and the heater produces power of 132 watts. What is the current in the primary coil? So we can use VP over VS is equal to NP over NS and get the value of VP. We have VS 110 and NP is equal to 5,500, and we have the secondary turns 500, and then we do cross multiplication, 110 times 5,500, and then we divide by 500, so VP is equal to 1,210, and then we can calculate the current using power is equal to VI. So we have the voltage 1,210 and the current is the required value. We divide by 1,210. That gives an answer of 0.11 amperes, so the answer is A. Question 33 says the scattering of alpha particles from a thin gold foil produces the following observations. Most of the alpha particles pass through the foil. That gives an information that it is an empty atom. Most of the alpha particles are virtually undeflected. This is basically the same thing. A small fraction of alpha particles are deflected through large angles. That gives an information that there is a concentrated positive charge. A very small fraction of the alpha particles bounce back from the foil. That means that there is a small volume that contains a very heavy mass that causes the alpha particles to bounce back. Which conclusion does not follow from these observations? So most of the mass of the gold atom is in its nucleus. That's the last conclusion. This is actually correct. Most of the atom is empty. That's correct again. The nucleus consists of protons and neutrons. You cannot find that out from this experiment. So the answer is C. Question 34 says a nuclide of chlorine has a symbol shown. What is the nucleon number of this nuclide of chlorine? So this is the nucleon number. So the answer is C, 35. Question 35 says which change is occurring in a nucleus during beta emission? An electron and a neutron become one proton? No. An electron and a proton become one neutron? No. A neutron becomes one proton and one electron? Yes. So the answer is C. Question 36 says the graph shows how the count rate registered by a counter near to a sample of radioactive isotope changes over a period of a few days. The background count rate is 5 counts per minute. What is the half-life of the isotope? So if we take the first reading, 45, we first need to subtract the background. So 45 minus 5, that gives us 40. Then we divide this 40, which is the actual activity, by 2. For one half-life, we get 20. But to move back to the graph with the background, we need to add the background again. So 20 plus 5, we get 25. So this is 25. We go to the line to get the half-life, which is 2 days. So the answer is A. Question 37 says which row about the orbits of the Earth and the Moon is correct? Approximate time for the Earth to orbit the Sun is 365 days, that's 1 year. Approximate time for the Moon to orbit the Earth, that's 1 month. So that's approximately 30 days. So the answer is D. Question 38 says which statement about the orbits of comets is correct? Comets have elliptical orbits, yes. So C and D, circular orbits, are rejected. And the Sun is at the center of the orbit? No, it is not at the center of the orbit. We have two centers for an elliptical orbit, so the answer is B. Question 39 says which row describes the power source for a stable star? So the power source of a stable star is fusion of hydrogen gas, so the answer is C. Question 40 says which quantity can be determined using the brightness of a supernova in a distant galaxy? The speed at which the galaxy is moving away from the Earth, the distance of the galaxy from the Earth. Yes, that is the quantity. Since the brighter it is to us, that means it is closer to us, or the less bright the light received, that means the distance is greater from the Earth. So this was the end of the exam. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful to you. Keep practicing, and I will see you in another video.